Kia ora, this is Chris with Earth Sciences New Zealand. The seasonal climate outlook, hard to believe another month has gone by, and this is for the period of August through October. We're getting close to the end of winter. What can you expect? Well, here are the headlines, what you need to know. A lack of westerly wind. We are going to see more frequent northeast to easterly winds. Doesn't mean all the time, just means more than usual, and that will have an impact on rainfall. Basically, airflow patterns impact and affect rainfall patterns. And that means areas in the north and east of the North Island, let me go away here so you can see this full screen, will have the best chance for above normal rainfall. So if it's going to be wetter than usual over the next 3 months, it's going to be the northern and eastern part of the North Island. There are some other areas, but that's where confidence is highest. By the way, we got to watch for dryness, as we'll show you, for the western South Island. More on that in a minute. And with a lack of southerlies or an increase of east to northeast winds, we expect warmer than usual temperatures. Yes, there will be cold snaps. In fact, as I record this, on the last day of July, July 31st, in the afternoon, there's going to be some chilly temperatures for the first few days or so of August. But that will not be a defining theme over the next 3 months. Right, so here are the details in terms of temperature. Disappearing once again, you can see for pretty much the entire country above average temperatures. Now, for the east of the South Island, where I'm pointing to, we do think there could be potentially, because of airflows coming off the water and a lack of westerly winds, which is a firn wind, a warm wind for that part of the country, there's a better chance of seeing temperatures maybe not quite so warm. So we're pegging it as somewhere between average or above average. Now, for the rest of the country, coming back on screen, it's above average, we think. Again, this is a 3-month period. This is not a 3-week outlook, not a 3-day outlook. It is a 3-month outlook. So there will be peaks and valleys, but when it all comes out in the wash, we think above average temperature. So what does this mean for you? Well, perhaps an early start to spring in terms of spring-like temperatures. Perhaps irrigation gets going a bit sooner than usual, particularly if it's warmer than average, because things will start growing. Maybe an early end to the ski season. I know snowfall for the South Island hasn't been great for every location. I think 75-80% of normal as an average for some areas. And perhaps some earlier days at the beach, particularly as we get toward the end of October. If you're a brave soul, water's still a bit cold by then. Let's talk rainfall. What can we expect for rainfall over the coming 3 months? Well, always a bit more challenging. I'll disappear. And for there you can see the north and east of the North Island, that kind of darker sort of teal or bluish green. That's where above normal rainfall. And this is the area we'll have to watch for big rainfall events. Look, we've seen this already, some of these big rainfall events across the country. For the rest of the North Island, into the upper South Island and eastern South Island, where I'm pointing to, we do think above normal rainfall is certainly in play, but there's a bit more uncertainty. So we think that the most likely outcome is that we'll be somewhere between, coming back on screen, normal or above normal. So it'll be within that spectrum. Sorry, I hit the microphone there for the extra noise. Now, for the western South Island, because of those easterly flows, those northeasterly flows we're expecting, that really isn't the type of airflow that is common. And as a consequence, we think that if there's going to be below normal or drier than usual conditions, this is the place that's going to happen, the western South Island. We still have to watch for big rainfall events. I mentioned the top of the country and the eastern part of the country, north and eastern North Island, but we can't rule that out for the western and top of the South Island. So western North Island, top of the South Island, perhaps not quite as likely. Basically, the odds favor these areas. Right. So what can we expect in the shorter term? Let's go to the weather space, as we like to start. Here is the first day of August, and we've certainly had some unsettled weather over the past few days. And what's going to happen is that, so what you're looking at, just to get our bearings straight, the blue, that is lower than usual air pressure, lousy weather, and the red is higher than usual air pressure, happy weather, high pressure. And you can see with low pressure going to our east and high pressure coming in, look, we're going to enter a period of really, pretty settled weather. I say settled, I mean dry. There will be some wind across the top of the country. We'll talk more about that. But there'll be a decent low passing, looks like a face here, doesn't it? Who says meteorology isn't art? Look at that. They got a couple eyes, they got a mouth going, ah. But this right here is another area of low pressure that will stay to our north. But we are going to see some chilly nights, I'm sure. So this is the 4th of August. So this is, I'll back this up. So the 1st is Friday. 2nd is Saturday. Thursday, or beg your pardon, the 3rd is Sunday. So 2nd and 3rd, probably some frosty mornings for the South Island, maybe even interior North Island. And then Monday, that high still overhead. And notice for the top of the country, we're getting more of these east to northeast flows. Remember, airflows counter or anti-clockwise are on high pressure, and with a low like so, high like so, that's the northeast wind. So tick, we're seeing that already early in the month across at least the top of the country. You'll note over to the west, over south of the Aussie Bight, by, say, Tuesday, here comes low pressure. So we're still good. We're dry. But as we get into the 7th and 8th of August, you can see it's hard to tell in this, but there's a bit of weakness here. Notice how we go from bright red. There's a bit of bright red, and then the color is not so bright right here in the middle. That's a bit of weakness. That could help promote some rain. So we'll watch for rain the 8th, 9th, 10th of August, about a week from this recording, late in the first week of August, 8th, 9th, and 10th. After that, we'll have to watch. Now we're going way ahead. More low pressure out here across the Indian Ocean. That's going to migrate east, and by the middle part of August, we could be looking at potentially another period, or at least beginning another period of some pretty active weather. Let's backtrack and talk about temperature for the first, say, week or so. And note we see a fair amount of blue, just zooming in a little bit here. So 3rd of August, that's a Sunday, and some chillier temperatures. So these are air temperatures, 850 hectopascals, or for an OG like me, we call it millibars. But nonetheless, we're going about 1,500 meters up because it's a good idea of what the theme of the atmosphere is like. And it's a cool atmosphere, and that makes sense. As a rule of thumb in meteorology, Uncle Chris here for you, whenever our high is to our west, that is going to drive southerlies, and that's a chilly wind direction, or at least give us a chance for chilly temperatures. Also, look, it still is winter, and the days, they're quite short. Nights are longer than days. And as a consequence, with high pressure, clear skies, and light wind, we're going to, in some ways, manufacture chilly temperatures, particularly for the South Island. Again, this is Saturday, so we go to Sunday. You can see the South Island starts to get unusually warm with red coming in, but still kind of a bit cool for the North Island on Monday and Tuesday. And then everyone starts to warm up. You can kind of get an inference of the airflow because you can see this connection coming from Aussie. So there's probably a bit of a low here. Here's a moist flow from the northwest. We're going to warm up. And this is when we could start seeing our next chance for rain, quite frankly, probably toward the 9th of August or the 10th of August. So basically, look, we're off to a pretty quiet start for the last month of winter. I think as we get toward the middle part of winter, we are likely to see more in the way of active weather. Why? Well, let's go to this. So I like going to velocity potential because this is a kind of a first principles way of looking at the atmosphere. So if you're new to the show, welcome. If you're a longtime viewer, thank you. What we're looking at here, if you're a longtime viewer, you'll know that this is describing lift in the atmosphere, at the top of the atmosphere, pretty high up. And when the air rises at the top of the atmosphere, or diverges, I should say, at the top of the atmosphere. We've got to be more appropriate here. So this is showing where air is splitting apart, going apart at the top of the atmosphere, and air comes up to replace it. You know, just like if you did this in a pool, you don't see a hole in the water because water comes from underneath to replace it. It's a fluid. It's the same thing. So this shows us where there's divergence aloft, and when there's divergence, that creates lift. And the cool colors, the cool shading colors, so these bluish or greens, this is showing where lift is favored in the month of August. And this is going to be especially true in the second half of August. So the expectation is that we should become more active. Enjoy the settled weather the first week to 10 days of August, because as we pivot toward middle and the second half of August, from the mid part of August, I think we're going to see this lift kick in across the country, or the effects of that lift. And then that's forecast to persist into September, generally speaking. So look, these east and northeast winds, why are we getting them? Let's go to the ocean. As my good friend Ben Knoll would say, former Earth Sciences employee, the oceans are the engine room to the atmosphere. And so let's go to them right now. Here we go. So we're looking at ocean temperature anomalies. So this describes basically where is it unusually cool, ocean temperatures, and where is it unusually warm. And you can see where we have the unusually warm, that's the red. The deeper the red, the more unusual. And we have the blue, and that's cooler than usual. And notice what's happened over the month of July. We are seeing these blue colors become more persistent and more, I guess, consistent across the central and eastern Pacific Ocean. And we're starting to get this quintessential, can I go to my telestrator? Can I go to my telestrator? Yes, I can. This quintessential horseshoe shape. So a horseshoe shape is really a hallmark to La Nina. We're seeing basically these cooler than usual ocean temperatures across the equatorial Pacific. Now, meanwhile, getting ready to that, over the western Pacific, ocean temperatures have remained and have even become more unusually warm. So if we bring this forward, here's the most recent, late July, we go back, you can see it's persisted. And it's certainly solidified. And you can see some of these pretty deep reds that have emerged in the Coral Sea. So we're starting to get what's called a dipole. That is warmer than usual temperatures over the West Pacific, cooler than usual ocean temperatures in the central and eastern Pacific. And that sort of configuration favors sink in the atmosphere over here, and it favors lift in the atmosphere over here. And that is important because when low pressure zips across the bight of Australia or the Australian continent or the Tasman Sea, we can tap into a source of moisture. So what this warmer than usual ocean temperature does is that it creates more water vapor. And water vapor, quite frankly, is fuel for rain. Here's another thing that's happening that's actually quite interesting. So while this is at the top, right? So this is at the top. Now, what I'm showing you now, this is a 3D view. Imagine a profile. Imagine you're at Kelly Tarleton's, right? And you're at the aquarium. While you're looking at the aquarium, you can see the top all the way to the bottom, kind of a cross section. But that's what we're looking at, except here, what this is over here, this is towards South America, and over here is toward Papua New Guinea, right? And look at this is really remarkable. Oh, I'll put that back on. Look at what's happened here. Do you see all this chilly, cold water? I say cold, but look, more than 2 degrees Celsius colder than average. Now, it is at depth. We're talking, if you look at our scale, 100, 200 meters below the surface. But this has really intensified, meaning it's become more unusually cool over the past roughly month or so. Meanwhile, over the western Pacific, we see this area of unusually warm ocean temperatures, not only at the surface, where I'm pointing to, but also at depth, down to about 200 meters. And what's going to happen as trade winds, taking this away, trade winds, basically, let me put my cursor back on. These are trade winds. They come up from the southern hemisphere, they come up from the northern hemisphere, and they converge along the equator, and they blow from the east to the west. Those are trade winds. When we have a La Nina, those trade winds blow even faster, and that causes what's called upwelling. So when we have stronger than usual trade winds blowing at the surface, that allows this cooler than usual water to come up to the surface. And as a consequence, what we're going to see, the expectation is that these cooler than usual ocean temperatures, they're going to likely become more profound, more unusually cool. Meanwhile, this is likely to hold its own or become more unusually warm. And we're going to really get that dipole going. And when we see this, we tend to see high pressure like so, and we tend to see low pressure like so. Pardon the really bad art. Let me do that again because that was bad. So low pressure tends to favor down here. High pressure tends to favor down here. And that gives us our kind of northeasterly to easterly type winds. So that's kind of the driving force right now. And whenever we see an MJO pulse come around, it hits this warmer water. That is the kind of the fuel, with the MJO being this pulse of energy that is the spark. And that's when we can get into these very active periods of heavy rain events coming from the north. And this is a big reason why we've talked about the risk for big heavy rain events. A lack of westerlies, more northeast winds to east winds, and we're watching for wetness. And that is because, quite simply, going back to our pressure setup, we're likely to see this setup where we have high pressure. You can see it right here. High pressure like so, low pressure like so. I mean, these will shift around a bit, but this is a microcosm where this kind of encapsulates what we're expecting at a broad level over a 3-month period. And what's going to happen is that as we warm up, go through spring, what's going to happen is that this right here, this high pressure, this band of high pressure, it'll shift a little bit farther south, and it'll make room for these areas of low pressure to move in and create those opportunities for big rainfall events. So that's the deal for the next 3 months. Once again, if you're just joining us, I'll go away right here, not literally, but just figuratively. You can see warmer than usual temperatures for the 3-month period. The east of the South Island, that's a region where we're not quite so confident. So we're calling that average to above average, so somewhere in between that range. And then for rainfall for the coming 3-month period, we are expecting that the upper and eastern North Island is likely to have the greatest odds for above normal rainfall. Other areas such as the western North Island, top of the South Island, eastern South Island, they could see above normal rainfall, but the confidence is a little bit lower, so we're giving about equal chances for normal or above normal rainfall. Look, one thing I'll say in closing, we got to watch for dryness in the western and interior kind of South Island where I'm pointing to right here, because with easterly, northeasterly winds, that's not a good wind direction for rain, and B, if that persists into deep into the spring and eventually summer season, that could prove to be problematic for the hydro catchments. We generate our electricity, a lot of it, from hydroelectricity and storage of water. And if it doesn't rain a lot or it rains less than usual, especially over several weeks and months, that could be problematic. Not to mention the snowpack's a bit lighter than usual, and the outflows or the melt-off or the runoff could be less than usual as well. So that's it from me. Be sure to read the document if you want to go to, you can go to Earth Sciences New Zealand. You can see it here. But look, if you're old school and haven't gotten used to it, you can simply go to niwa.co.nz, either one, and you can read the Seasonal Climate Outlook. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Ngā mihi nui.